Welcome to Books We Never Read.
Except for those we have.
This is Jason.
Oh. That's Nicole.
And this is episode 16, where we go through West with Giraffes by Lynda Rutledge, chapters 7 through 10.
I have never had someone steal my own intro.
Oh my goodness. So,
welcome to our last episode.
Before we get started, make sure this is the video that you intend to watch, because we talk about the episodes as if you have already read the portion that we're talking about. So if you're just getting started with West with Giraffes, make sure you back it up to that playlist and go to the first episode. Feel free to peruse the rest of the playlist options where we have other books that we've gone through, like 3 Body Problem, 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, Evelyn. What else have we read?
We read Salem's Lot.
Oh yeah, spooky scary.
I don't remember what else.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're doing great.
This is our first episode of 2023, right? Our first real episode of books we've never read. And I want to take a second just to think back to the books we did read, now, because it was a lot of fun. We started this probably around Halloween or so, maybe a little before. Was it really? Wow.
September?
Oh no, that's right. That is right. Yeah.
Because on Memorial Day we were.
Well, I think of 3 Body Problem as one book, and it was really
it was 3.
So, yeah, it was a good year. It was a good year.
It was a lot of fun.
And what a great book to be reading to bring in 2023.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about it.
Very much so. We would like to know if you guys have any reading related goals set for 2023. I know, on Goodreads and stuff, you can set reading goals for the year.
Oh, cool.
And I imagine just naturally, our easy goal would be for books we never read to read 10 books. It takes us about a month to get through, and that gives us, taking off towards the end of the year.
I have a reading goal.
What's your reading goal?
So I've already started, I'll be honest. But so every day I'm reading one of the aphorisms from Dakodo. That's the book by Miyamoto Matsuki. I'm getting that name wrong. I'm just getting confused. It's a lot of M's. It's Matsuki.
Do you have it? While he's pulling that up, I'll tell you, every day I'm reading from The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday.
I'm going to be doing the same.
And I'm also currently reading, otherwise, Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday.
Yeah. Miyamoto Musashi. Musashi.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but every day I'm going to be reading one and just thinking about what it says.
Yeah.
And it's every day. There's only 21 of them. So I'm going to be repeating a lot.
Oh, wow. So you're holding that through the whole year?
That's the plan.
Cool. Well, let us also know what you've got going on for your goals. And
one of your goals should be to never miss an episode of books we've never read.
Yeah, we're a delight, as you can tell. Let's see, other housekeeping things. Please comment below, add to the discussion, and give us book recommendations. We read and respond to everything, and we really love all the input that you guys have. And let's see, that's all the housekeeping that we got. Like, share, subscribe.
Yep.
Cool.
Next week will be the last episode of this book.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this week is coming out the announcement of our next book. So go ahead and make sure you watch that all the way to the end, because that's where the announcement is. And go ahead and get that next book, because we're very excited.
Yeah, super pumped about it. Cool. And here we go. So, oh no, my brain's in a lot of places today. So yeah, okay. So, what are you thinking about this section of the book? Overall thoughts?
I think that the first couple chapters were really peaceful, and there was a hurricane and the Dust Bowl, and so
of the book as a whole, not of this section.
Right.
Okay.
The first parts of the book were relatively peaceful, right? It was, and you had told me this is kind of setting the stage or whatever. There is so much nonsense and chaos that happens in these short little chapters right here in the middle.
The word that I like that was used? Chicanery.
Okay, there you go.
There was some chicanery going on in this section of the book.
Mm-hmm.
It was. There were lots of parts that really, had me on edge.
Yeah.
I was really emotionally invested in what was going on. There was a part that actually made me quite frightened for them.
Mm-hmm.
Several parts.
Yeah. I don't often feel very strong emotions about books. I read them and I understand that the characters feel strong emotions, but I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I probably feel more that way in movies or something, where I can I hear the sound and there's the music that is getting me going. But I definitely did hear, because I think of the way it is described. It's so personal, and it's so like it's not trying to be anything other than it is. Like, you're just like listening to this guy, and you feel like it's your own thoughts almost.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really did get to me. But in some of like the terror, there was also some real beauty, and there were some really great lines and scenes that I've written down that touched me, I suppose.
Yeah. There was, just bouncing off of what you said, there was a lot of beauty running through these moments of terrifying or disheartening elements, and so I like that, and I like that the giraffes are a symbol throughout of just innocence and hope and fragility, but also hope.
Yeah.
And I like that. When we ended our last episode, you had kind of challenged the viewers to think about, like, what's their light at the dock? What's their, like, symbol holding them through? And for Woody, it's California, but it's becoming the giraffes. We're seeing that transition where, I mean, yes, California's still the goal, but you see him becoming more and more attached and protective of these giraffes.
Right. Well, I'll go ahead and blow into the lines that I was saving for later, because it's appropriate for what we're talking about now, but... I don't remember who said it. Might be Red who ultimately says it, but somebody says, home is not the place you're from; it's the place you want to be. Which on the surface sounds like California, but it's really here. It's right here in this truck on the road with the giraffes, or wherever the giraffes really are. Right,
and he quickly acknowledges that it's not California.
Yeah. Well, and and because. Even whenever you go into these scenes where he is older and he is writing this story and he's talking to Wild Girl about everything, the kind of what we were talking about last week with the longing for a place you've never been, or like a different time or something like that. His home is somewhere in the past at this time, and I think I like that way of thinking. Home is where you want to be, not necessarily where you are. So.
Yeah. I am really starting to feel the sense of urgency of him getting this story finished before he dies. We're getting more interruptions of him just finding himself on the floor or, passed out at the desk or whatever. He's not eating. We know that this is the end. And I wonder, is he going to finish the story? Are we, because we're getting the nurse that did kind of the cleanup and going through the belongings to give to family members.
Yeah.
That person is reading this manuscript, but we're also seeing him write. So I wonder, are we going to see the actual, end of it?
Yeah.
Or is there going to be some pieces left out?
I think we'll see the end. I mean, like, I don't know what that means. I don't know where the end is for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't think it ever ends. But like, I think they'll make it to California, and I think they'll be delivered to the zoo and all that. And then I think we'll see him die.
Yeah.
So.
And. Is there something else that we're waiting for? His sense of urgency to get this whole story told, it's because the giraffes have gone extinct. And but, I'm interested to see, like, what else is in there that we haven't seen yet that we need to know. So, yeah, I'm excited to finish this up and see what's left. I thought it was interesting, that he does have a nurse that he's told most of his stories to. But towards the end of this week's reading, she said, well, I've never heard anything past Arkansas. I think she's at Arkansas, or maybe past Memphis, something like that. And he's like, yeah, I told you. But he lied. And so I wonder, why are there pieces that he haven't told people so far? And
Guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
I mean, the chaos is not over. There ain't
no
way. No
yeah,
way.
No. Speaking of chaos.
Yeah.
The circus people.
Yeah. Boy,
what the heck?
Yeah. There was like a little line in there that probably doesn't mean a whole lot to most people, but just saying, like, before World War II, people just felt like they could do whatever they wanted to, and they could just like move down the road and become something new. And that's sort of like you're stealing giraffes, right? And so like there's a dude who had 2 giraffes who's being covered by all the papers, and now he got one. And you have one where you didn't have one yesterday.
Right.
Everybody knows where that giraffe came from. But there's sort of this like, well, I just won't come back around these parts, and like, how are they supposed to figure out who's giraffe? It's like, I don't like if you were to steal a giraffe today as a circus, and like you were in Memphis yesterday and you didn't have a giraffe, and you're in Little Rock tonight and you do, everybody like, what's up with that?
And I just can't believe that people at this time wouldn't be like, what's up with that? Yeah. There are no giraffes in this country. There's just nowhere else you could have gotten it from.
Yeah. And I would like to think they got caught, right? But it's that kind of, it's just that kind of mentality where like, well, we'll just keep moving on and nobody will catch us.
Right.
Sort of
you just recreate yourself everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And it's the circus and them following the tracks and knowing that they're just following the same line as the circus is following. They're constantly trying to like duck out and hide from them. It very much reminds me of, if you've ever read Jurassic Park, just the terrorist that is that T-Rex. It is always right there, even when you think it's not. So I mean, like, that is our big bad right now, is this circus, and it's very scary, and it's you know, the serpent trying to ruin this little, you know, land of paradise that's going on with the, you know, offering the money to Woody, and Woody is very tempted by that.
Yeah, that's actually, comparing that to the apple in Eden is really good. I like that. Bowles is described as like such a just greasy, unlikable character, and Woody's realization that he's being manipulated into showing him how to open the cage, like when he's up there and he's doing it, he's like, oh no, like that's so sad, because like lots of people get bamboozled like that, you know, because you don't necessarily think about it, and then you realize like, oh well, I've showed them exactly
how to do it, and it was just so painful to read that part, because he knew he was being manipulated, and as current day Woody writing this, he kept saying things like, you know, I wish I could have told you I made a different decision, but I didn't. This is what young, hungry me chose to do. And as I was reading it, I was just like, Woody, don't do it. Like, just say no and tell him to go away. It was so painful, and it just kept going and going. And when Woody woke up the next morning and noticed the old man looking drunk and stumbling, I think the old man was kind of bamboozled too.
I think he got attacked, right? He got hit in the head.
He did get attacked, but I wondered what led to that point. You know, was he also...
He understood the dangers of the circus, though. Like, he understood it, because maybe he's worked in one before or whatever, right? And they know who he is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it did seem... I immediately recognized, though, when the old man wasn't yelling at Woody for taking the money and all that stuff. I mean, I immediately realized the old man understood. This is a kid who has gone through some bad stuff.
Are they making a movie for this book?
I don't know.
Man, what a great scene. Like the whole giraffe fight in the cornfield. Like, what a great scene.
Yeah.
That'll be a wild part of a movie.
That was crazy.
I enjoy, like talking about how, like, the circus had lions, and at one point while they're driving next to the train tracks, like the giraffes hear the lions, but also there are literal lions, but you also get the sense that they're being chased as if they were prey by this train, and like talking about like the noise the train makes, you know, on the tracks as it goes over whatever the pieces of wood are called or whatever, like you know, there was so much, like, I don't know if double entendre is the word, right? But like, there's so much extra meaning there in that train, and talking about the predators and all that. And I enjoyed that analogy. Yeah,
lots of symbolism there for sure. And you know, just bigger picture of prey and predators and innocents and manipulators, and you know, just a lot. With the old man forgiving him, and with the giraffes even forgiving Woody, I just saw we're really building this theme of redemption and salvation, and we have so far the two most important entities in Woody's life have forgiven him, but obviously he still hasn't forgiven himself of whatever has happened in the past, because he keeps having these nightmares. And there was even the quote, there are far more serious salvations than the kind you find in church, and I was in need of one right then to save me from myself.
Yes, I like that. You know, he has no family anymore, and talking about like the giraffes forgiving him, there's a description of the giraffes like getting close and touching him in the way they had touched each other on that first night at the like decontamination station or whatever.
Quarantine.
Yeah, the quarantine. And I enjoyed that. Like they see him now as like one of them, and it reminds me of these stories of like wolves taking in people or some other kind of animal, just thinking you're one of us now, right? Or I think of my dogs who just think I'm
part
the
of
biggest
pack.
dog. Yeah,
You're the biggest dog here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did also write down a quote of when girl curled up and it, like her neck curled up in my lap. With girl's sweet head in my lap, it was rushing through every last inch of me, my heart swelling full and warm and pure and kind in a way I'd clean forgotten it could.
Yeah.
I was lost in it, its surging tender-heartedness taking my breath clean away.
And that's when he takes the lasso off of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was such a powerful scene. Like after, I mean, we jumped straight to the circus, but we've skipped the part with the bear, and we skipped the part where she choked on a hat, and like,
I forgot about the hat. Oh my
and the part where, I mean, like, and we're gonna go back to it, I suppose, but like Big Papa's clan, and like, there's so much nonsense that happens, and then like they have had such a rough like 48 hours or whatever, and then she puts her head in his lap. And like looks at her, and like all I can see is my dog. That's all I saw.
Our dog does kind of have a long neck.
Yeah, well, and she got big eyes.
And big eyes.
So,
and,
I just that scene really spoke to me. But talking about the giraffes laying down or whatever, I thought you were going to talk about. At one point, Wild Boy lays down and like turns back on himself, and he lays down defying the laws of necks.
That was a really good one.
You're a professional. You're like you are in the top 5% of all writers. If you can write a sentence like that, you don't have to write anything else. I just thought that was excellent.
Well done, Lynda Rutledge. That line also made me think of our dog, the puppy, she's big and she doesn't know she's big. She'll curl up and put her head on her butt. You know. Man, to be able to use your butt as a pillow. Yeah. Oh yeah, so we did skip a lot of things. Let's go back and talk.
Well, I mean, the first trauma they have is going through the tunnel and then the switchbacks and then getting hit by Red.
Oh, Red!
And
she redeems herself though, running in to save him during the cornfield.
Yeah,
incident.
that's true, and I wasn't mad at her for it. Right, like she and Woody have so much in common in a lot of ways. Right, like I guess I do. She has her own secrets, right? We're starting to find out, like, maybe she's married, and like
it was the guy that Woody punched.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't really judge her for being overeager because these are both like young people who are trying to make it, and that's fine. I was never mad at her, and I never really felt like she was in need of being forgiven. And I also don't really feel that way about Woody. Like, I don't think he needs to be forgiven, because talking to the guy and like taking $20 or whatever to show him the giraffes, like, he messed up, but he didn't do anything like wrong. Like, I don't feel like he made a mistake, but it wasn't wrong. Right. And
no, the circus guy is
Well,
wrong.
and with the wad of cash that the guy gave him, like, that guy threw it at him. You know what I mean? Like, he
pushed it into his hand. Yeah.
He didn't. He did not make a deal, right?
Yeah.
At no point did he make a deal,
right?
And that's kind of the breaking point.
But I guess that deal was implied because he didn't give it back.
Yeah. But like, if I was the circus guy, I'd give a bunch of cash to you and then be like, "Look at that! I've been working with him this whole time, and I just would have said it." So,
yeah.
Honestly, I don't think Bowles is a very good bad guy. He needs to like rethink some stuff. He could do better.
Yeah. So another part that this was the part that had me very afraid for them, is when they entered Arkansas. And all of a sudden you see these signs of, if you're, I don't remember exactly how it worded it, but basically, if you were black, don't stop here.
Yeah.
And a lot of our viewers are younger, and so might not know, and also international, and so might not know. But the KKK, or the Ku Klux Klan, is one of the oldest terrorist organizations in the United States, and they started their work right at the end of the Civil War. Started in 1865, originally just scaring newly freed blacks, like dressing up as ghosts and running around. But it quickly turned into something much more violent and much more sinister, burning houses and lynchings. And by the 1920s, It was a national organization.
Yeah, well,
it
had become
huge.
Institutionalized, at least in the South, in a lot of ways, right? With these sundown officers.
Black codes and these sundown officers, all these, these were people doing, the invisible empire's work. And the KKK had infiltrated every aspect of religion and politics.
Yeah.
And even though their goals shifted throughout time a little bit, I mean, they were serious stuff. And it wasn't just in the South, but I think we're just more sensitive to it here because it was strong here all the way through, the 80s and 90s. And even though it wasn't institutional, it wasn't a whole national organization by that point, it was broken up. Very powerful, very dangerous.
Yeah. Well, and they're still out there in ways, right?
Yes, yes, it's the longest running organization, especially if you consider it in all of its different names that it's on.
I don't remember the guy's name, and we don't have to say it, but didn't the head of it just run for
So,
Senate or something?
Yes.
A couple of years ago? Yeah.
And also several times.
Yeah.
There are many of us where we're from who, if we go digging through our grandparents' attics, we find signs for a well-known KKK leader running for office. And it's just, it's everywhere. And it's terrifying. They were responsible for innumerable deaths and disappearances, not just of people who weren't white and Protestant. That's the two-prong, thing you have to follow to not be a target of theirs, but also sympathizers. Yeah. If you were white and maybe or maybe not Protestant, but if you were helping anyone else, well, you're almost worse because you're a traitor.
Well, that's when they picked up the guy selling the pecans or whatever it was, right?
I was so scared.
Well, and he kept saying no sir, no sir, no sir, because he knew that if he was caught with these guys, it was over. And he knew that it was going to be over for them too, right? As sympathizers or whatever.
Yeah.
And I agree, that there was, I said last week, I think, that what's really cool about this book is it's covering sort of this change. And the 1930s are in such a weird, that was less than 100 years ago, And it's at this weird point. It is at the midpoint between the Civil War and where we are now, right? Which is so bizarre. It's just so bizarre. And it was really, maybe not quite the height of institutionalizing some of this, but it was where it was really getting going. There was all sorts of racists left over at the South from the 1860s and 90s, but where it started sort of becoming.
Well, yeah, Jim Crow was in full force. Yeah. Jim Crow laws were the laws that were designed to keep African Americans from fully utilizing the rights they should have had as freed people in this country. Yeah. Everything from marriage to where you live to which water fountain you use, libraries, everything. It regulated everything. Right.
Well, I guess what I'm saying ultimately is I love the juxtaposition though between Sundown Town and some of the other nonsense that happens in Arkansas and Big Papa's Clan.
Yes.
Because when you get Big Papa's Clan, we have a real horror element where there's a dude with a scythe on top of a levee or something, and he's looking down at you, and that's scary.
And you just don't know which way it's gonna go.
And then all these super jacked dudes come out of the forest or whatever, and they surround what's going on, and they were the nicest people, and
put them up in the hotel and fed them and solved their problem. Got their tires situated. Pushed them through that tunnel.
I don't think there's anything particularly unique in this juxtaposition, right? It's so common that it's almost a trope, right? And not for bad reason or anything, but to show because you need that juxtaposition to show the humanity.
That is truly what life is. It's
and there's I'm not saying that. Every African American person in the South at this time would have done that. Some of them would have killed them and taken the car, right? Some of them would have.
Sure.
And we also have to be aware that part of why, maybe part of why somebody is nice and helpful is because, if you do kill the guy, then they're going to come and get you, And so, there is this element of fear here. But, I don't believe that about Big Papa's Clan. I think they were genuinely kind people.
They're just good people.
Yeah.
Hardworking
and Woody says he'd never even seen a black person in the panhandle of Texas, and so maybe that made them smarter than anybody he knew, which was really funny. but that's such an important piece of the history of what's going on in this time, and it's such a piece of history that I feel is glossed over, right? Where we are, especially, and it's something that I was never really taught. I was aware, but it was avoided, and there was no there was I felt like it was done like without judgment. It was just told. This is what's going on, right? Do I think that the Sundown officer is like a particularly good dude? No, not really. But he doesn't think of himself as a villain, and that in some ways makes it worse, right? But you know, we look back on history, we look at these people who didn't think of things the same way we do. And I'm fully convinced that people who are doing evil know that they're doing evil. Like you know, like, hey, I'm doing something wrong. You know, but there are other people who are like on the edges, you know, who are just like doing, and they don't quite feel that, and so then they don't quite understand. But I know when I'm being bad to a person, even if I think I'm doing it for the right reason. You know,
Right.
so it was a very powerful piece of the book.
I liked how, you know, they joined forces over the giraffes. You know, I just thought that was so beautiful. Again, these giraffes are just the symbol of innocence and just the best of what nature has to offer.
Well, they call them the creatures of Eden, right?
Yeah.
That's what Big Papa's calls them. And one of my favorite scenes in the entire reading was Honeybee feeding them pancakes.
I loved Honeybee.
Yeah.
I thought that was just, it was just so beautiful. Yeah. That whole story. I would love to see that story from that family's point of view.
Yeah.
Man, one day we were just getting ready for work in the morning or whatever time it was, and a trailer of giraffes got stuck in our tunnel, you know, or overpass.
Yeah. You know, like, in a way, like, I enjoyed that part of the book, and I like the juxtaposition to show sort of like the wrong that is being done in these other places. But also, like, it was almost like too simplistic, and they were almost, the Big Papa's claim was almost like too perfect, I felt like, and it almost had like a bit of like a Noble Savage feel to it, and I'm not here for that really. But like, you know, just sort of like, here's these simple people living off the land. Everything's good. Everything is good with them, right? And they're the ones who are looked down on and judged, but they're the ones living these perfect lives. And then you come back into town with all these white folks, and we got problems, you know. And so I just want to point that out. Like, there is that element there, and I'm not sure it's intended, and I enjoyed that part of the book. But like, if it had been another group of people, like if they had showed up on like an Indian reservation or something, like, I think we would have been like, all right, man, hang on a second.
Yeah. I don't know that there's enough time in this book to, you know, show Grumpus cousin number 8 who like didn't want to.
And I'm not necessarily criticizing the writing of it, but I'm pointing out that there is.
It can be romanticized. Yeah. You know, that like, while the population was victimized, you know, that like everyone is an angel within that population.
Right. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. That makes sense. Have more 2 pages of notes on this one. I really got a lot going on. When they were on the mountain, so this is towards the beginning of chapter 7. They're just, I think I'd kind of hinted at this or mentioned it a little bit in our last episode, but you know, Woody is just BSing his way through this, and you're right, it was only a series of a couple of days, about 48 hours, but by the end of that, he's like, he knows what he's doing now, you know. But going up that mountain, when he said, like, sure, I can do it, he didn't know that he could do it. So he started, and it's like, can you get us through the tunnel? Yeah, I can get us through the tunnel. He didn't know that, but he did.
Yeah.
I can get us off the side of this mountain hangover, you know, and he's just winging it. And we do that all the time. We get ourselves into situations that we don't actually know we can pull ourselves out of successfully. And most adults can think back to at least 1 or 2 experiences in their childhood when they're like, I probably could have died that day.
I'm doing it right now.
But that's where growth comes from, you know? Whether it turns out good or bad, that's when you really learn who you are and what you're made of and what path you're on in life. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. You know, talking about like the growth he's made, my final note that I had made is he's at the Little Rock Zoo, and there's a cop picking up a hobo, and the cop apologizes to Woody and says, sorry, sir, and it blows his mind that Woody, somebody would call him sir.
By the end of this week's reading, is unrecognizable to the boy he was in quarantine.
Yes.
And we see that when he catches that boy stealing the oats at the zoo.
He sees himself, right? Like, that's ultimately what it is.
He's like, I don't know why, but sometimes when I look in the mirror, I see that boy. Because it's you, Woody.
Right.
That was you. Yeah. You stole food, and you pushed a man down, and you ran away, and you smelled terrible.
Yeah.
He is...
in just that short amount of time,
in 3 days.
Yeah.
he has become a completely different human.
Mm-hmm.
His station has changed, and it goes back to that whole, before World War II, you could just go further down the road and become a new person.
Yeah.
But what happens now that he realizes that the Southern Pass takes him straight back through Texas?
Yeah. Well, so now that he has become something different, he's going to have to. I can't remember what part of the hero's journey it is, but it is returning home, right?
He's got to face. Yeah. He's going to have to face something going back through there. Yeah.
It would be interesting to think about this book in terms of the Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
There's something there.
2 weeks from anywhere.
Yeah. Yep. What else you got?
Twice now he has told people, "Don't call me son," and he does not have good.
He's 18 now.
Yeah, he doesn't have good memories of his father.
Yeah.
Just very like that phrase, or calling him son, really pulls out something ugly in him.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's interesting. Oh, okay. So another one of our subscribers had pointed out a phrase that she really liked, or a quote she really liked, and it was when he was talking about choices and plans, or just choices made in advance, and how he's not very good at that. But that little part of the story was when they were side by side on the highway with the circus guy, and he couldn't make a choice. But even not making a choice is making a choice, sure. Right?
Yeah.
And so that whole part was interesting. But I just wanted to give a little shout out to. I think the username maybe Sujay.
Gotcha.
Sure.
Really?
Had pointed out,
Yeah,
choices
absolutely.
and plans, and that you're building who you are as you go.
Well, and I think in some way, like he didn't make a choice because he had guns on either side of him, right? And so I think of choices as turning, and so he continues straight forward, which is, clearly symbolized by this road and the guns that he's got on him or whatever. But yeah, and I think some people might think, well, I'm absolved if I don't choose, but that's not true.
You're not.
Yeah, it's not true.
If you, and again, this goes back to this sunset town and all that stuff. This guy who may or may not see himself as a bad guy, right? He's just doing his work or whatever, but when something isn't right. Yeah. And to stand by, you're complicit. Yeah. Even if you don't act.
Yep.
And that even goes in with the building of World War II, and was it Churchill that condemned people for standing aside and letting the Jews be persecuted, and that even if you didn't actively do anything, if you didn't do anything to stop it, you're just as bad.
Just this week in Germany, they convicted a 97-year-old lady.
I saw that.
As guilty as an accessory to murder because she was a secretary at a camp.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, but that's the complicity thing, right?
Yeah.
So, I'll drop it.
I mean, there's a lot to think about with that. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I really got a lot out of this part of the reading.
I really enjoyed it. There was a lot more. I think we pulled some social critiques out of it last week where maybe there weren't any, but this week they're like, hey. Right. So it was really good, and it'll be interesting to see what else is going on because like I said before, this is really like the beginnings of the modern era, and this is the death of this old world, the death of the old South, and the building of we haven't talked about it, and it's we don't need to spend much time on it, but talking about FDR's programs, and what we're talking about is the beginning of the interstates, and what we're talking about is all these social services programs that we now take for granted today that did not exist before.
With the WPA and all that stuff.
And so all these different things that are sort of staples of a modern society and economy and things like that just were not. One other thing I thought about was we've made comment about how cars were relatively new, but these motel places that they keep stopping at did not exist until there was a car culture. They just did not exist, right? Because you pulled your wagon over and you made a fire and you did your thing.
Yeah.
but you didn't have all that with a car. And so
that's interesting.
And so I kind of thought about that a lot, and especially at Big Papa's place where it said, you know, like the Motel for Coloreds or whatever it is, because there weren't any like places like that because it was whites only, or you know, whatever segregationist nonsense people were doing. And then I wonder, well, who are the color people who are coming through, right? Like, well, what's going on there? And I don't really know the story there, and I don't know much about driving cars and you know, African Americans at that time. It'd be interesting to learn a little bit more. But motels and hotels are a thing we think are normal,
right?
And
it was
they
not,
were not,
yeah.
right? They had inns, you know, and that was about it. So there's so much packed in here.
Yeah. Tons of Googleable things, you know. So speaking of which, at the hobo scene where the guy was like reading his little, or Red was reading his little card, I looked that up, and that's real. You know, there really was the oath of the hobo, and they also had their own symbology. So they would kind of mark, kind of like a graffiti mark or whatever, coming into town or whatever, and every mark, you know, meant different things. Like there's an angry dog here, or there's a person with a gun here, or these people are. If you one of them was, if you talk Bible talk, they'll give you food. Like, and it's all like little symbols and stuff that they would just like splat on the sign or whatever.
I think they taught some in like Boy Scouts when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, cool.
I don't remember any of it.
But I spent quite a bit of time learning about hobo culture.
He was like, a hobo's not a bum. A hobo's proud.
Yeah. It was very interesting. And there was, let's see, on the card it said who like the president of the Hobo Association was, and it was established. It was just this one guy, and it was established at this one convention they had. And then I also had found, as I was like scrolling through the results and stuff, the old news article, like, you know, reprint in maybe Tennessee or wherever it was, like hobo convention downtown, you know, and like what has this brought to our city? And you know, it was really, really cool to read some of that stuff. And we had talked last episode about how, since this is a period of time that you're so interested in, everything brings up for you more loaded connotations. You know, you read one little sentence about something that's a passing remark, but in your mind that has exploded a whole scene of packed information. The same thing kind of happened with me going through the Sunset City, because I know
so much about that.
Crazy kinds of stuff about the KKK, because I used to have to teach about it. But for viewers or readers that don't have all that information, there's 10 billion things that have happened in this book that you could Google and learn so much more about. Books like these are such like historical fiction, or it's such a great gateway to learn about so many other things, and that's why I like this genre so much. You know, you have the fiction and the story and possible romance and, you know, whatever. But then there's also all these little interesting pieces that help you learn about the world around you.
You know, and I guess historical fiction is not like a genre that I think I've read a lot about. But when I think about it, I really did read a lot about it as a child. And I read a lot of like Civil War stuff, like about like drummer boys and like from their point of view or whatever. And like, I don't know why, that was just what was out there. And like, that's weird now that I think about it. And like, maybe we should unpack that someday. But maybe there's like some weird lingering, you know, racist elements. That It'd be interesting to go back and see that book. But it was specifically about like a Confederate drummer boy, and like and like we can talk about it later. But like,
there's some interesting things in there.
But you know, understanding where you're from is important to be able to work on your past, you know, or to work on your future. And, you know, we live in a time and place where, you know, I mean, there are certain states that are trying to outlaw talking about different things like this. Like, they are literally doing that. Things that are talked about in this book. And I understand that it might be uncomfortable for people, but, like, deal with it. I'm not saying that anybody's complicit in the sins of the past. What I'm saying is that we are all complicit in the sins of the present. That's just the way it is.
And we're built on our past.
And honestly, when we read about the sundown town, and I listened to that guy talk, I thought about how he did not understand. And I'm not one of those people who like judges historical figures on their sins that they didn't quite grasp. Like, do I think they should have understood? I do. Did they understand? Maybe not. And so you can be a great man. Like, I'm gonna pick like George Washington. I don't know. You can be a great man and have done wrong at the same time, because all of them have. I can't think of a single person that is just the hero.
The world's not split into good people and Death Eaters.
There you go. There you go. I just don't believe that. And
right.
and so in reading that part about the sundown town, I probably spent too long thinking about like, what book am I going to show up in someday where I'm that guy?
Right.
You know, like, well, what am I doing? You know.
Well, to him, to his small piece of the world. He's keeping it safe.
Yes.
That's what he's thinking of. He says, I want safety, and we don't want nonsense, and we don't want anyone doing anything after sunset.
Yep. And I support all those things.
I'm keeping my little family and my little home safe. You know, so in his mind, that's as far as it went.
Right. Yeah.
Not thinking of what damage are you doing and what are you willing to do to someone else that your fear just makes you think is a threat.
Right.
Just your ignorance of people.
And I've had several conversations lately about different things, and like I think stuff like that is like the most weird and un-American thing that became so common and might still be so common, but to give other people a chance is as American as apple pie, right? Like, and to say, I don't care where you came from and I don't care what your people are, but like, do you like safety and no nonsense after dark and like all this stuff that we like? Then you're us.
Right.
And that's so American. And I guess, like, for me, like, I still believe in that. Like, I still believe in the dream.
Yeah, bring me your poor, your tired, your huddled messes, and all that.
And I think it's something that we should fight for, but I think it's something that other people aren't getting in our way. We do.
Yes.
You know, and we constantly do that.
Yes.
And I thought about that a lot in looking at the racism in this part of the book. So. Heavy.
It's good stuff. I mean, this is a great read.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to recommend it to everybody. Because it's easy and you don't have to like any particular genre. Do you like good?
Just a good story.
Do you like good story? Go read this.
Yeah. So I'm excited about wrapping this up and seeing where we go from here. You know, and this is also a great story if you don't want to think as deeply into some of the pieces that we thought into.
Sure.
You know, it is a great story.
Yeah.
Period. But there's just tons of things that you can unpack along the way.
Yeah. If you didn't want to think as deeply about the racism and the nature of this particular part of the book, I don't think you would have to, and I think you would still enjoy it. And I think you would subliminally.
You understand there are dangers of all kinds.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Lots of different sins. My last little thought, just speaking of sins, reminded me of that. The circus man recognizing Riley's name, calling him a murderer. And I don't really know how to verbalize it, you know, but I don't even think Riley as a murderer is as scary as what the circus man represents.
Right.
Are there cases where manipulation and thievery are scarier than murder?
Yeah.
And yes.
Well, as soon as he said, well, that guy's a murderer, I was like, well, I'm sure the guy deserved it. Like, in my head.
We're already on Riley's side and we don't know the past. Also, Woody is a murderer, apparently.
Yeah, he threw some guy off a train. We don't know that the guy died, but for his shoes. And I don't remember if that was talked about in the beginning of the book or not, or if that was just like all of a sudden presented to us, but I don't remember it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and there's also that talk of, you know, if he were aiming to kill, there's no question the person would be dead.
I assumed he was just talking.
I thought he was saying that he has shot and killed someone before.
So he's like a country boy. So he
he knows how to shoot, right?
But I'm so used to him saying, "Well, it would have worked out the way I wanted to."
Just BSing again.
Blowing smoke.
And I wonder, you know, is he as responsible for what he thinks has been murder as what he thinks he is? You know, is he just internalizing and punishing himself for something that perhaps he wasn't really quite guilty for doing? And I'm sure that that's going to come to light at some point. And maybe he did do something cruel and terrible. And does that change how we look at him? You know, does a cruel act make you a bad person? You know, does he deserve to be forgiven? Yeah. Does he deserve salvation?
I think doing a cruel act is the baseline to make you a person. Like, doesn't make you a bad person. Yeah. It gets you on the level with everybody else.
Right.
And you know, I've said this before in like other videos. Like I don't think there's any whitewashing. I don't think there's anything you can do that takes the bad acts you've done off the scales. Like it just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just and you have to accept the fact you must live intentionally in a way that like you try not to add to that side of the scale and you try to add more, and that's all you got.
That's all you can
and
do.
that's just like a realistic opinion about it, I suppose. So,
and you also have to acknowledge the fact that there are some things that you do that you'll be caught for. It'll catch up eventually, you know, and you've got to face the consequences of those choices. Yeah. And that's unfortunate sometimes, you know, and painful.
Yeah. Yeah. I still feel like, you know, if this was a romance, we still have the breakup, right? Like we've had troubles, but like the family has been strengthened, right? Everybody's bonded together over this. Like I still think there's going to be a reckoning. That has not happened yet. And so I think we're going to get that in this third.
Well, he's about to go into Texas, so there's a reckoning away.
Okay. True. Yeah. Okay.
You know, and maybe he goes through Texas and doesn't have to face any of his demons. That'd be great.
Unlikely. Every one of us has faced our demons when we've gone into Texas.
We have any viewers from Texas?
Sorry, Texas.
We've got some feelings.
Goodbye.
I gotta say, my last few experiences in Texas have been lovely.
That's fine.
There's been growth.
My last thought.
Okay.
When he wakes up from this nightmare,
this most recent one?
Yes.
It's a new
one.
one.
And he goes out there and he asks the guy, he's like, do you have lions here? Do you have whatever? He's like, do you have raccoons? And the guy goes, who wants to see a raccoon?
I'm not gonna lie, I really enjoy the raccoon exhibit at the zoo. You know?
Where? What?
You know, the little red pandas, aren't they just little raccoons?
No, different. They're endangered.
Little raccoons.
Never
They're
found
so
one
cute.
in my trash.
I don't want anything to do with one in real life, and I don't want to touch one. I don't want to feed one. You shouldn't be feeding the wild raccoons. Yeah. But I understand that some of us do, and I get why. They're real cute.
I find them cute.
I was real upset one time though. A raccoon got into our trash because we had run out of room in the can, so we had to leave a bag out. And I'm like, why is there a sock out here? And then I realized the whole bag was toe up from the flow up.
Oh, was here?
From a raccoon, yes.
Oh.
I was shooken.
All right.
Anyway.
I feel like we've run out of things.
You've learned a little more about me than I guess you needed to. So we'll catch you next week for chapters 11 through the epilogue of West with Giraffes by Lynda Rutledge.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
Leave your comments below. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Please do.
See you next time.